나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교. Hello everyone, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Welcome friends. I hope this podcast video finds you healthy and safe. And today we're going to continue our discussion of the 10 worlds or life conditions, remembering again that this is part of a larger equation. And once I go over each and I complete these 10 worlds, I'm going to revisit the subject of the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment from the perspective of Tendai's elucidations of this mention in the Immeasurable Meanings Sutra, the ovation to the Lotus Sutra. What Tendai does is basically extrapolate the meaning of a statement that Shakyamuni makes in the Innumerable Meanings Sutra that includes a breadth of teaching within all of the teachings. So he was very good at doing that. Nichiren uses it extensively, so does Miao, so does Dengyo. The 3,000 realms in a single thought moment of life. A very, very critical, important insight into the workings of our mind, the nature of our struggle, if you will, with our self-improvement, our self-acknowledgement, our true self nature, that of Buddha-ness, and our critical knowledge of how our minds work, our bodhisattva work. It is a complexity that musters compassion, because quite honestly, the complexity of the mind is something in Buddhism we recognize as incredibly what is the word I'm looking for? Cellular. It is the key to unlocking the idea, the thought, the understanding of the way the life process works in all phenomena, from the universe itself to planets, trees, grasses, and you and I. So the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment of life is a very, very root, no pun intended, teaching from day one. Not necessarily obviously so, but this is, Shakyamuni was trying to dissect the mind of human beings for his students so that they would gain insights into the way their very lives were constructed, the way our lives construct themselves within our mind's ability to be conscious of it. What is consciousness? How does it come about? How does it influence us? And these 10 worlds are admittedly just words, but they're words describing mental states, perceptive states, cognitive states, functions of the mind that anchor us, that trip us up, that are fundamental to our samsaric attachment, that are signs of cellular attachments, the very constructs of which we take as veracity. My truth, your truth, their truth. All of them differ slightly simply because of the filters they come through and about in our conscious mind, which we are quite gleefully unaware in samsara that are constructs of these countless assumptions. There's a whole science dedicated to this. Epistemology is a whole science dedicated to understanding the plasticity of the mind and the way that the mind sets up certain knowns from which to extrapolate meaning and knowledge. Because knowledge is just an accrued bunch of assumed facts that we take as true. But it's a very constructed thing. And this is what Buddhism wants to take apart, not just for the luxury of taking it apart and going, aha, look at this mess. Although it may seem that way. We take it apart to have some compassion for the way we human beings come to our conclusions. Most of the time, creating suffering for ourselves. And it's not a bad thing. It's just that to know it is to feel compassion for alleviating it, for liberating ourselves from it. Yep, that's Buddhism. This is why fundamentally, I always say Buddhism is about not only about the mind, but the attitude and the intent. Because our attitudes and intents come from these incredibly elaborate constructions. And so oftentimes the greatest shortcut, if you will, to influencing those massive collections of data is to decide to have a particular attitude, to deconstruct, or just to rise above it. And this is in fact what we do, one aspect of what we do when we chant Daimoku to this mandala of our Gohanzen, our Buddha nature, our Buddha wisdom. So all of that is preparatory to talking about the world of learning. Up until now, the 6 lower worlds have been almost graduations, and I don't mean with a cap and a diploma. I mean graduations of, or gradations, if you will, of the depth of our experience of self, ego. You could say that in the world of hell, we're completely insular in ourselves. Maximal selfishness, self-being, me. And as we climb out of those mental experiences from the world of hell to the world of hunger and animality, you can see there's a gradation there where with hunger, we're reaching into our environment to satiate me. And then in animality, we are competing with others So now the ego grows to perceive other egos, and not long after that, we want to manipulate those egos and use them for our purposes, anger. See how the ego is expanding now to include more and more, and its voracious appetite for selfhood. And then at some point, we make the realization that, see the world of realization? You can't, these worlds are never alone. We're always transmigrating through them all. But we have to identify certain behaviors, certain aspects, in order to get a better understanding of how all of this mixes, right? So at some point, you realize that everyone's doing the same thing, and that's kind of an equalizer of sorts. It makes you think, well, this is all I need. Then you get insular again, and this is your tranquility. And you kind of ducking. Let the world go by. Let me just be here with this stuff. Right? It's not the kind of tranquility you have in mind when we talk about it in regular society, but that is tranquility as a life condition. And then we have these moments where briefly we have these tremendous joys or satiations or excitements, rapture. But having all of those, that's our samsaric human life, right? Or the life of all sentient and insentient beings in samsara. That's pretty much the scope. These are the worlds of sufferings. But if we pay attention, our human minds have the ability of curiosity and questioning. And as soon as that happens, we move into another world or another, maybe we shouldn't call them worlds, because that seems to imply a solitary location. And that's not what the worlds are about, the 10 worlds. They're really about these fleeting mental states, because they're all interconnected all the time. And even in the depths of our sensations of hell, Jigaku, we can have insights. And that's the world of learning. It permeates everything just like all the others permeate everything. Our goal is to shift our big mixing bowl of life conditions from hovering and mixing in these lower worlds and concentrating more and more on the higher worlds, the worlds that lift us out of samsaric bondage, our attachment to phenomena. And learning is the first step out of that samsaric trap. But be advised, learning can also be an attachment. The perennial student, I'll use as a common societal example, never wanting to leave the security and the insular environment of school. I liked school. I was very much a nerd in school. And I don't know, I don't think I ever felt like I never wanted to leave the school to do something, but I actually considered being a research scientist in the school environment as a career. So that's an attachment to learning, but also to realization, because to me, learning was always about realizing not successes so much as personal growth, not just of accumulating facts, but contributing something new, making discovery. And, Shakyamuni talks about people like that. Men at the time, men and women, if you will, of learning and realization. Those two worlds, they get talked about together a lot. And the reason they're talked about together a lot, mouthful, in Buddhism, is because the early schools of Buddhism, the Hinayana schools, spent a lot of time learning about the mind and body connection, the way the mind works to control the body, the way the body moves through the environment, the phenomena of humanity and consciousness. And these people were considered dedicated monks, learning and coming to realizations, to the point where they labeled, the Shravakas were, and these worlds of learning, and I should mention realization, really took their meaning from the Buddhist teachings themselves. In other words, it's all fine and good that you learn how to cook certain roots and vegetables and so forth to prepare a meal, but the learning that we're discussing at this point is hearing the words of Shakyamuni, of Buddha. And at this point, it starts being less about Shakyamuni the man and more about Buddha as a universally attainable mental state. And I say this because this is where some of the arrogance comes in. Once you learn and learn for years and years, and then you make realizations, and you become aware of how to use your mind to exert control on your body, your mind starts to think that it has found enlightenment. You can exercise all this control. And in exercising that control, you feel superior. And feeling superior is a very short step to feeling you're better than, and you're arrogant about it, because now I have complete control. I have attained what the Buddha has been teaching. And so you call yourself an arhat or an arahant. And that's very intoxicating. And it could stop your progress. And we, in fact, read about this in the sutras. Certainly in the Lotus Sutra, we read about it. In the sutra's words, these are people who have not found what they think they have found. And so they consider themselves equals to Shakyamuni Buddha. I have my own Buddha. I don't need you anymore. I know what this is. Right? It's very arrogant. But we're just talking about the learning part today. And so learning can be very exciting. When we're younger, we're constantly learning because everything's new. Everything's different. Some stuff scares us, so we don't learn about it. We make a choice. But you've heard me say this also several times, is that I don't like to call what I do teaching, although in secular life that's what it would be called. But I kind of, I'm reticent to say that or use that word because teaching happens within ourselves. We teach ourselves. And that is truly what learning is. The environment, your surroundings, are all teaching you, but they're only teaching you via your acceptance of the teaching. So it's really learning. Your environment is constantly providing you with fodder to learn. But I can't force you to learn. I can't take a bucket of learning and throw it at you. I can't. All I can do is offer up and create conditions for you to maximize your learning potential. There we go again with potential, energy. So the world of learning, it's kind of hard to isolate it from realizations. Because when I say learning, most of us would say, yeah, I remember learning how to do maths, or I remember learning how to ride a bike. But what you're remembering is riding the bike. What you're not remembering so much is, what the hell is that thing with two wheels, and what do those things do? All those questions. Wait, I sit on this and I put my feet on those and zing, wow, oh, that scares me. What the hell is that? Because you went backwards on the pedals. It's not until somebody helps you get it all together, or maybe you did it on your own, probably not. At least you watched others learning and you assimilated information and data and you put it together, and maybe you fell down a couple of times. Maybe you walked away disgusted. Maybe you went back determined. But that's learning. And then when the first time you catch yourself from falling by steering into it, now you've realized something. Learning and realization they're very intertwined, aren't they? But learning comes in many forms. Learning sometimes comes in the form of just assimilating information and doesn't really amount to much. Comes up in your dreams. You fantasize about it. Wrongly or rightly, doesn't matter. Until some point when you do. When you actually take action to use this data and it results in something meaningful, then you move from learning to realization very quickly. They're almost two sides of a coin, aren't they? But the larger point is that this life condition, and since they're so integrated, why don't we just say this video is about learning and realization? Because it's really hard to separate them, honestly. Both of these worlds, learning and realization, are a different aspect of your ego, of your picture of self. Very different from the first six worlds, wouldn't you say? We've taken a major step here. We're now going to affect samsara, where you could say that the first six worlds are the samsaric condition, the tendencies of human life, consciousness in the universe. But that when we get to learning and realization, although they all intermingle, these two components of mind point to an aspect not of anger, remember that's controlling and manipulating, but of something more self-perceptive as growing outside of those bounds of lizard brain kind of behavior. Not mere survival, but surviving better. Not better than others, better than self. See, animality is about I'm better than you, you're better than me. I'm brave, I'm a coward. Follow? Anger, I'm going to use you to get better for me. Possessive, thingness, ownership. But learning and realization is not about anybody else. It's about I could be more. I can be better. I can be more self-sustaining. Yeah, maybe better than others, but that would be a mix of animality and anger along with your learning and realization. Do you see how they intermix? I failed the test. Hell. I need to get an A. Hunger. See, I'm just pointing on how these worlds all mix within one another. You can really only say that we have general tendencies, and depending on the conditions, will manifest more learning or more anger or more hell or more of the bottom three or more of the bottom six or more of, do you see where I'm going? It's not just a one-to-one. They're all mixed into the bowl of your experience. To the accumulation of 3,000 realms in each and every moment. I keep coming back to that because it's very easy to insulate these terms as, oh, I'm in the world of learning right now. No. We're never in the world of learning. We're never in the world of realization. We're never in the world of hell. We're always in a shifting, amorphous combination of all of these while we push our tendencies toward bodhisattva and Buddhahood. And without Buddhism, we don't have those worlds available to us. The highest we can do with ourselves is learning and realization. This is why we have scholars. This is why we have professionals, and we have PhDs, and we have doctors, and we have surgeons. These are people of incredible learning and realization. But they are not enlightened unless they choose to be. And that takes a whole nother effort. And we haven't gotten there yet. And maybe in learning and realization, we come to the realization that there must be more. There must be something that I'm not getting here because I'm not satisfied. Well, what world is that? They're all interdependent. They all work together to form our general life state. Okay? So that's learning and realization. From here, we go to bodhisattva. And that can be a hard wall for some. Certainly is for Theravadins and Hinayanas. Because they believe they've got everything they need in order to be enlightened. They're very smart. But to help others get to where I've gotten, I don't know that number one, they deserve it, or that they could ever reach the heights that I have reached. I've spent my whole life, or most of my life, coming to these realizations. I'll be nice to people. That's part of what I've learned. But can I raise them to the point of their own liberation? That's their work to do. I'll, I'll help them a little bit, but I'm not going to take them anywhere beyond what I know, certainly, because this is the pinnacle. Well, that's the wall, isn't it? And that's what Nichiren and Tendai and others called Ichantikas. Shakyamuni spoke about them, right? People of learning and realization can easily become people of incorrigible disbelief. Disbelief in what? Disbelief in there could be anything more profound than realization. No, this is it. I've detached myself. I understand. Intellectually, I understand. Yes, but do you experience it? Well, of course, because I understand it. Really? Then why won't you help him? Why won't you help her achieve this release that you say you have? Well, I can help them along the way, but that's not going to increase my enlightenment. Well, incorrigible disbelief. This is why in Mahayana, the goal isn't an intellectual realization, it's an experiential realization. And that can only come through bodhisattva work, raising somebody to their Buddhahood, to their enlightenment, taking them beyond learning and realization, creating more bodhisattvas. Because in the world of bodhisattva, in the mind state of bodhisattva, in the influence of that sphere of thinking, learning and realization simply become tools to get to Buddha-ness. Unattached, completely unattached to learning and realization, unattached to all of the lower worlds. Still there, but unattached. Not just for the self, but for others. Then the self is released. Do you see? We don't get there first. We get there through helping others get there. This is what Shakyamuni meant by perfect and complete enlightenment. By assisting others to realize their Buddha, I immediately do so myself. But I don't do it selfishly. I don't do it solely for my enlightenment, but for the enlightenment of all beings. It's in Gangyo, right? It's in the last statement of the Juryo chapter. At that time, the world on... Spoken verse form. I should tag this page. Page-turning karma. I haven't said that in a while. At all times, I think to myself, how can I cause living beings to gain entry into the unsurpassed way and quickly acquire the body of a Buddha? The body of a Buddha. What is that? Bodhisattva. That Buddha is a life state of samsara, albeit unattached to all the foibles of self in samsara. You rise above it. How can I cause... At all times I think to myself, the mind. How can I cause living beings to gain entry into the unsurpassed way and quickly acquire the body of a Buddha? How do I make bodhisattvas? This is what instantiates my bodhisattva in samsara. This is Mahayana. And those are the two higher worlds that we're not talking about yet. We're talking about learning and realization being a clever stepping stone to those two higher worlds, but also can be an anchor. And you can stop there, but you will not attain perfect and complete enlightenment. Words of Shakyamuni. All right. Don't know how long that was. Plenty of time on learning and realization. Next, we'll tackle Bodhisattva and Buddhahood. Even though I've mentioned them a bit here, we'll do a little bit more in-depth study of that. And then I'll get back into the 3,000 realms. Thanks for listening. Thank you for contributing. Those on Patreon, those outside of Patreon, Jewel, I mean you, and others who are giving regular contributions through PayPal outside of Patreon, that's fine. Some of you, occasional contributors, really invaluable to keep me going, keep this broadcast going. And I profoundly, everyone thanks you, not just me. It's our Sangha that gains from your contribution, so thank you. Oh yeah, Tammy will forever be my teacher on this. Like, subscribe, and share. It's Bodhisattva work. It's a really simple way to do it. And we all appreciate it. So thank you for being here. Don't forget about the podcasts. You can download the oral podcasts. They're just transcripts of these. Transcripts? Not really transcripts, but transposition. What would you call them? Just the audio portion. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.